So in the previous video, we created this particular view, which enables the creation of a new chat room like so, and it creates these links which the user can click to enter the actual chat room where he can chat with other users. What we're going to do now is we are going to create a route which enables us to load the chat room interface. To do that, we'll go back into the routes.js and we're going to say router.get /room /ID. So every URL to the room, to the actual chat room interface, carries with it a unique number, and this unique number represents this particular title, this particular subject. So what we want to do is we want to capture that number and we want to create a unique partitioned room where users can chat about this particular subject. The first step in this process is going to be the ability to register this route and obtain the unique room number or the ID of the room that we have in the URL. And to do that, we'll create the callback function for the route, and we'll start by invoking the response.render, where we're going to render the room view, and we're going to pass in a couple of things. So the first thing that I want to pass in is the active user, which, as you've seen earlier in the routes, is in the request.user object, followed by the room number. So this is the number that we are going to extract from the route, and we can do that by saying request.params or parameters.id. So every time that you create a route like this, all these variables marked with a colon are parts of the URL that you can extract later by using the request.params. The variable name. So in this case, what we're doing is we are extracting that number by looking up the request object, and specifically within the request object, we're looking up the parameters and we're looking for something called as an ID. All right, so let's also pass in the config, because we're going to need it in several places. And what I also want to do is I also want to find out the title of the room. So for instance, if somebody clicks on world cuisine, I should be able to get this title as well. Now the way I'll do that is I'll create a variable called room_name, and I want to create a function which allows me to look up the rooms array that we have and find out the room title, the room name, by using the number that we have just extracted from the route. So let me create that function. I'm going to call that function as find title. So it's going to find the room title or the room name, and we will pass in the room ID. Okay, so this room ID is the room number. This is that unique number that we are extracting from the route. And the way this works is we'll just initialize a variable and we'll just use a simple while to look up the rooms array. So while n is less than the length of the array, if rooms bracket n dot room number. So remember, in the rooms array, we have every room represented as an object with two keys, the first one being room_number and the other one being room_name. So what we want to do is we want to loop through the array and we want to try and see if the room number equates the room ID that we are passing to this function. We want to return the rooms bracket n dot room underscore name. So it's going to loop through the rooms array, and whenever it finds a match of the room number, it's going to return the corresponding room name, and it's going to break the while loop. Else, we want to increment the counter and we want to continue looping. So by using this function, all we need to do is we need to pass in the number of the room, and it's going to return back the name of the room or the title of the room. So now let's use it here by calling the function saying find title, and we will pass in the request.params.id, and obviously this is going to extract the thing out for us, and we will pass this in to our page because we would require the title in several places. So let's just pass this here, and that's our routes done. Okay, so let's go into the rooms.html, and one of the things that I've done is there was a reference to the public folder here, and if you recall in one of the early videos, what we did was we used the express.static middleware to define the folder which carries our static assets like the CSS files and the images, etc. So we don't need to specifically have a reference to the public folder here. So I'm just going to get rid of this one because this would be there in the files that you download from Udemy. So make sure that you remove the reference to the public folder at this point in time. If you don't do this, then your CSS file will not get loaded. Okay, so you might see a page without any of the CSS styling that exists for this particular view. All right, so let's just load this up and see how this looks like. So I'm just going to restart the app, and let's just refresh, log in. Let's create one particular room, and let's click on this room, and it says that rooms is not defined at find title. All right, so what seems to be happening is that even though we are calling in the rooms array, the routes.js file doesn't seem to be able to see that particular array here. And the reason for that is that we need to pass in a reference to the rooms variable here. So let's just do that. I seem to have missed out on this. So we'll just go in the app.js, and over here where we are calling in the routes.js, I'm just going to put a comma here and say rooms. Okay, so this will then allow the routes.js to look up the rooms array because that array has been defined, has been declared in the app.js. So now we go back into the routes.js, and we'll just connect the reference like so as an argument. Let me just restart, and hopefully now we should be able to load the room, right? So this works fine, but there's just one problem. I just refreshed, and you saw that this view is loading up even though I restarted the app, and the session should have expired and it should have actually logged out. Okay, so the way we will solve this problem is back in the routes.js, right after declaring the route and before the callback function, we need to use the secure pages middleware which we had created earlier. And this middleware, as you would recall, allow us to check whether we are indeed actually logged into Facebook or not. So we'll just after the comma we'll say secure pages, another comma, and we're done. Let's just restart once again. Now if you try and refresh this page, you'll see that you are logged out correctly. So you can't directly access the chat rooms view or even the page which shows you all the available chat rooms, because those two pages are off limits to anyone who's not logged in. So I'm just going to log in again, and let's just now let's create a room. Let's create one more, and let's go into any one of these. Let's go into World Cuisine, for instance. So now that we are inside the view, there are a couple of things which are missing. First being the profile pic. So let's just go back into the page. Let's go into the room.html, and you can see that I had initially hard coded the profile pic. So I'm going to remove that. And now that we are passing in a reference to the user object, the request.user object, just like the other page, what we can simply do is use the Hogan Mustache syntax and get the user.profile pic here. Save the file, refresh. Okay, you don't need to restart the app because this is just a view, and you can see that the image loads up fine. Also, I'm going to remove the hard-coded name that we have here for the active user and replace this with user.full name. Okay, you will not see any change for obvious reasons that I had hard-coded in my own names and I'm the one who's logged in, so that's obvious. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to go into the h5 tag here, which displays the name of the active room, and I want to get rid of this hard-coded room name and replace this with room_name. So in the routes.js, we had created a function which we are using to extract the title of the room from the rooms array, and we are passing that in as a variable called, as a key called room_name. So now we can actively display that on our page. So if I refresh now, you'll see it says World Cuisine because that's the page that we are in. I also have a reference to the more chat rooms button, which should take us back to the chat rooms page. So let's just set those URLs as well. So this would be simply a reference to chat rooms. This link is now active, and this one being /logout. So refresh, and if I click on more chat rooms, you can see that I go back to this page. I'm already logged in, obviously. And if I click on, let's say, Node.js, I go inside the Node.js chat room, and you can see that the title correctly displays Node.js. Now if I go back into the World Cuisine, you can see that it correctly shows as World Cuisine.